So to begin with, trace the skirt pattern, leaving room either side of the centre front and centre back. First step is add 3 centimetres to the bottom of your centre back seam and run that straight up to your waist, so there's nothing added at the waist. And that just helps the skirt to stand away from the body more. And do the same on the front piece, 3 centimetres on the centre front. Run it into the waist. Next step is to add pleats on the centre back seam. So again, a right angle from your new seam. And I want my pleats to be 8 centimetres deep, so I need to add 16 to there. I'll run that right all the way up to the top. And square that off to your waist. And then we add the crotch part. So down this line we add point X, which is body rise measurement. Body rise is the measurement taken on the body from the waist to the seat in a seated position like it shows in this picture. The average is usually somewhere between 27 and 29 centimetres. So in this one we're using 28, and we add to that 5 centimetres, which is 33. 33 centimetres down there. From this point, add a right angle. So along that line we're measuring 1/10 of the hips plus 5. In this pattern 1/10 of the hips is 11 centimetres plus 5 is 16. We need to add 16 onto there, and that 16 can be taken right to the bottom of the pattern and becomes the new inside leg seam. So now we're going to fill this curve in for the crotch. You don't want to bring it any higher really than the hip line, which is roughly here. So from somewhere around here, draw a curve and bring it in to your new seam there. That's basically your back piece done, so we'll just move on to the front piece. And you're going to add the crotch part again. So again, 33 centimetres down to match again. We need a right angle. As you've noted, we're not putting pleats in the front of it because we're going to have the concealer panel. The front only needs 1/10 of the hips adding, so that's 11 centimetres on this pattern. Again, we run that down to the bottom. And the hip line's around 22, so again we run a curve. I'm not bringing it too far above the hip line. Take another piece of paper and lay it over the centre of your front panel. We're going to make a pattern now for the concealer panel. So trace your new centre front line that you added a new one. Trace up to your dart somewhere. This is entirely a personal preference, but you're just making a replica of the shape of the skirt. Bring the line right down to the hem and trace the hem. This is going to be a centre panel. This side will be cut on the fold, so you don't need to add any seam allowance. These three edges, a basic seam allowance needs to be added. So that's the seam allowance drawn on there of the front panel. Cut one on fold. Now you need to just add seam allowance around the whole edge of that and your hem allowance, and mark notches for your darts and your pleats. So we've cut out all the fabric pieces just the same as we did for the skirt tutorial. This is the two front pieces. I've stitched and ironed the darts like the previous one. I've also added pockets. If you want to add pockets, you should do this now. Next stage is lay the two front pieces right sides together, and we're going to stitch this curved seam around the crotch. Here we have the two back pieces. I've also stitched and ironed the darts. Now what we want to do is iron the pleats in. So using the notches that you've marked, iron a line that reaches notch to notch. And find the other one and iron the inside. The inside pleat there. So you can see the ironed edges there. You don't have to, but I am going to top stitch those just to hold them in a permanent crease. So I'm going to do that with the other side as well. And then once I've top stitched those, I'm going to lay them both right sides together and again stitch this pleat, including a zip in the centre back. So these are the two back pieces stitched together. We've got the zip in the seam there, and here we have, you can see the top stitched pleats. Now we need to pull the pleats into the centre and lay them where they're going to be. Make sure that they meet up, you don't have a big gap in between them. Those two edges want to touch and have the little zip pull just poking through. Once you've got them laid in position, pin them at the top, and you're going to run just a basic stitch across the top to hold them in place. So that means just a basic running stitch to hold them in place. I'll go right to the bottom of those pieces, and this line here that runs from hem via the crotch to the hem, pull that out straight. Then get your front panel piece, which you've stitched together now, and right sides together, find the same seam, hem, crotch, hem, and we're going to pin those two together. So line up the two crotch seams together and the two hems, and then we're going to stitch this one as well straight across. On the back seam we need to top stitch down these pleats so that they don't open right from the top, but they're going to stay down and open from further down. I'm going to pin it down so far, but remember not to close over the zip. You're going to stitch it just right next to the zip. So just top stitch both sides down to the same level, and then your pleats are going to hang from a little further down, not from the waist. Once you've top stitched those, you bring the front piece to the back piece, line up your centres, and then stitch the two side seams down there. So there's the side seams all stitched together. Now you need to iron and pin the hem like so, and top stitch the hem. Leave the waist unfinished because we're going to attach the lining to that. You now need to cut out your lining and construct it just the way you did for the outer, but the lining doesn't need this pleat in it, so fold the pleat away and then pin the pattern like that to your lining fabric to cut it out. And then after that, complete it the same as you did the outer, but remember when you stitch this seam to leave a gap where the zip is, don't close it all the way up. This is the lining constructed with a gap left to match the zip. Don't do the hem yet, that's going to be done last. So take your actual skirt and turn it inside out, and then tuck your lining inside to match with the right sides together. And then get your pins and go around and match your lining to the outer, so match up all the side seams and the darts so that they all match. So once you've got all those lined up and pinned, stitch them together according to your seam allowance. Next, take your front panel, which you've cut one of fabric and one of lining, lay them right sides together, and you're going to pin from the top corner down to the bottom, across the bottom and back up, leaving the top edge open, but stitch those three sides. So once your lining's stitched in, put everything back to the right side, and then iron your lining so that the outer fabric is just to say poking over the lining, so that when you wear the skirt the lining's not going to show around the waist. As you iron that down, pin it, do that all the way around, and then we're going to just do a top stitch to hold that in place. And once you've done that part, you can then hem the lining at the bottom a little bit shorter than the actual hem of the skirt itself, so that it's not going to poke out when you've done. And that's the body of your skirt finished then. Next, with the panel, clip off the corners, turn the whole thing the right way out. And again, iron the edges so that the lining is just 1 millimetre inside the outer fabric, so it's not poking off at the edges. So you want to iron it so that the lining is just to say inside, so that when you've got this on the outside of your skirt you're not going to have the lining showing. So iron that all the way around, and we're going to top stitch it all the way around. So now at the top we just fold that in the seam allowance and iron it. And then as we do our top stitch, we can go all the way around and catch that in as well. And then once you've top stitched that, you need to lay it onto your skirt and decide where you want your buttonholes. So this one I'm going to make 8, so you need to put 8 evenly spaced buttonholes and then stitch buttons onto the body of the skirt and fasten it together.